Welcome back to this clown's garage. In this video I'll be swapping out the 700R4 that comes stock in the 3rd gen Camaro, and we're putting in this beefy 480E from Jake's Performance, stage 5. It's got the billet triple disc converter from Jake as well. This is how it comes shipped. It gives you some instructions to follow, and it crates it up like this nicely. This particular unit is good for up to 1500 horsepower and probably a lot more than that. So I have everything here that's needed to do this conversion. I got a transmission crossmember from PA Racing, and that is for a small block Chevy made to 480E, which I think he's the only person that makes that crossmember for it, with the torque arm. I have a Derale cooler I'm going to put in there. I also have US shift controller here, a quick 4 controller, also putting in SFI flex plate from ATI. So let's begin. So the first thing I'm going to do is, of course, empty out the transmission fluid. I have a temp sensor going here, an odometer temp sensor. So on the sender, I'm just going to undo this. Now take this off. Alright, now I have one bolt in the back, loosened a little bit, and there's only one bolt holding it in the front. So I'm just going to hold the pan in the front, take the front one off, and slowly drop this down. Back one off. And the rest of the fluid should come out. So this is the reason why this transmission is going out of here. You can see the clutch material here. Now this is only a couple blocks of driving. This transmission was overheating pretty badly when we were driving around. So bye bye 700R4. Now once we drop the pan, a quick thing I want to do here while I'm at it, I'm going to disconnect this throttle valve cable, the TV cable that's connected up to the throttle body in the engine. I'm going to take these 10mm bolts off, and then take this wire off, then disconnect the cable from on top. There's another 10mm bolt on top. And then once the Chinese out, I could go up on top and just take the throttle valve cable off the throttle body. So go ahead and take this off. Now the trick is just to get this cable out of here, just like that. And I could put this back together, but screw it. Now I'm just going to take this off on top. So that's where the throttle valve cable bolts onto the transmission. That's a 10mm bolt. So I'm just going to take that off now. And there it is. And now this throttle valve cable should come off just like that. It's out of the transmission as well. Alright, now that it's pretty much drained, I'm just going to put this back on with a couple of hand bolts, and we're done draining the fluid. Now I'm going to take this shifter bracket off. Now here, just put the car in neutral. That should be neutral. These are 13mm. And now this is the other U-joint strap. So that's off as well. Now this has a rear drive shaft loop. So take this off. There's 4 bolts holding this in to the torque arm. Now the drive shaft can pop out. Just put a pry bar right there and it comes right out. Slip it more into the transmission as you do that. And now this bad boy comes straight out of the trans. Alright, so what I'm going to do now, this is actually not part of the swap. So I'm just going to put a link to this video of me changing this underneath in the description below. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change this pinion yoke in the back here to a larger 1350 yoke, U-joint. That's a smaller one, that's stock. So it's going to be actually shorter than where it is now. And this will help us out because the 480E is a lot longer than 700R4. So we need to probably shorten the drive shaft. So this might actually help us out. We might not have to shorten the drive shaft. So I'm going and switch this out now. Alright, now we're going to cut the cooling lines coming out of the transmission. Okay, that's one. And that's two. Now I'm going to cut the transmission lines over here. These are soft lines. Whoa! Squirt some on my camera girl. These lines, I can just yank them out. Alright, so this is the transmission cooler. Let's take this one out because we're putting a nice Derale one in here. And let me pop these tabs off here. And now this pulls right off. Okay, now I'm going to use a flywheel turner to turn the flywheel, and I'm going to take these torque converters to flywheel bolts, flex plate bolts off. Put it right there. Oh yeah, yeah baby, woo! Now I'm just going to turn this and do the same thing 2 more times. And this is the third one, the last one. Now I take this torque arm off. These are 15/16. Take that off. Now you could grab the torque arm, pull it down, and just move it up and down. And this thing comes off like that. Now do the torque arm bolts in the back over here. These are 7/8 down here and 13/16 on top. Now the back one. And make sure it drops on the floor just like that. I'm going to put a block of wood to get a little more leverage in there. And pry this biatch off. She's coming. She's tight. She's tight, baby. Oh yeah. She's tight. Oh yeah. Oh. And there it is. Thank God I had my camera go as a cushion and it didn't fall on the floor. So I put a transmission jack underneath the transmission and it's supported. And now we can take this transmission crossmember off. Starting by taking these 16mm bolts off the transmission mount. Now the two 15mm bolts that go to the frame rails. And then over here. Let that drop. Then this one here. And you're good. Take this trans mount off. It's 15 millimeter, these two bolts. Now for this exhaust hanger, there's a 15 millimeter bolt, nut and bolt here. So let me take this off. Oh, baby! Woo! She was on there tight. That was only a mile long. And now it's a 1/2 inch. And a torque converter lockup plug on the driver's side rear of this 700R4. That comes off there. The vehicle speed sensor. Let's try taking that out. Now the bell housing bolts. Go in there with a large extension. Let's crack those loose. Alright, so that's loose. That's a 14 millimeter, by the way. This is how I'm getting it, by the way. Long ass extension. Going all the way over here. I think that's loose. That's out. Yep, that's out. Now top right one. And this one's out too. Woo! Alright, so I lowered the transmission a little bit in the back, and I got a little extra space here. And I'm going to go from here to get this driver's side one. Ah, yeah, baby. That's what I'm talking about. And she's out. Alright, now this one. Yeah, baby. Alright, now the top left over there, the driver's side. Ooh, yeah, baby. Woo! Okay, so we strapped this on here so it doesn't go anywhere. I also want to mention there was 4 bell housing to engine block bolts on this car, but there should be, sorry, there was 5, but there should be 6. The one on the top right was missing. So just so you know. Now we can take the transmission out. Alright, now to push this transmission out. Yep, there you go. And do the same thing on the other side. Out. And this is out too. Alright, she's out, folks. She's out. Roll it back a little bit. Start lowering it down. Make sure nothing's in the way, nothing gets snagged. And there she is, folks. Okay, now to the flex plate bolts off. Alright, now the TV cable inside the engine bay. And there goes the TV cable. Now over here in the middle, the shifter cable goes through. I popped out the stock boot. I'm just putting a big grommet here. So, go ahead and do that. Right, so that's good. Alright, now we're going to put this quick shift 4 in. We're going to wire it in to our Megascore computer. You have to piggyback off the powers and the grounds off that computer. And this is what it looks like. I also downloaded the software, the free software they have on my laptop. So we use that to tweak everything. It also comes with this loom. So I'll go ahead and start this now. So the first thing we do before install this is unhook the negative side of the battery. Put that to the side. Now I'm going to use the T15 here inside the car to take off these bolts here from the B&M Mega Shifter plate. Take that out, and now take these bolts here off of this plate. Now the factory grommet is here. I'm just going to cut that with a pair of snips. I already used my own grommet. You could try snaking your wires through there if you want, but I'm just going to use that bigger one for now. So I'm just going to cut that and yank this out. Alright, so what we're going to do is I'm going to make a hole right here in the center console to pass all the wires through for the quick shift 4. And we're going to have everything in here. And whenever we need to use it, just pop it out. We don't need to use it anymore, pop it back in and close the center console. So right here, there's nothing behind here. So I'm going to make a little hole. Alright, so I'm going to put this in here. This plastic is thick here, so you need a thick grommet like this. And you have to be careful because there's a screw here. So that's actually the perfect spot right there. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in. Okay, just got to finagle it in there. With the flathead. I think we're good. Alright, so now these wires here are going to go underneath the car. These are for the rear and front speed sensors. This is going to go through the hole over here in the grommet. These wires are way too long. We're just going to cut these. So we're going to feed the wires to the grommets. This goes to the controller, and this goes to the transmission. So I'm just going to feed these wires through. Then we also have another set of wires. These wires here. And these wires, I'm going to go close to the ECU. This goes to the controller, and these go close to the ECU. So I'm just going to be pulling wires through grommets, so not much to show here. Alright, so I put a coat hanger here, and as you can see it came out of this hole. So I'm just going to tape this end over here onto this and pull it through the hole. Alright, now it's taped over there, and let's try pulling this through. Okay, we're here. Just gotta finagle, and it's through. Woohoo! So I'm just going to snake the rest of the wires in. Alright, so we got one of the speed sensors here, and the other one. And now for this connector, I cut these. Whoa, what's that? Is that you, Brianna? Yeah, what are you doing over there, Brianna? Oh, you're lubing the hole. Nice. Ah, there she goes. Okay, so we put the transmission on this tranny jack, and Jake put the AN lines here for the cool lines. We're just taking them off because I'm going to put my Earl's steel lines in here. These are anodized aluminum, so we're not going to use these. So, thanks for putting them on, Jake. These are the fittings we're putting in from Earl. It's part number 94006ERL. And one thing to note if your fittings are back here, you need one long one. If you don't put that fitting in here, you're gonna ruin your transmission. So go ahead and put these on now. Alright, so it comes with a crush washer, put that on there. We're gonna put those on there. That should be good. I'm gonna run these fittings here, 9-degree fittings from Aeroquip, part number FBM1122. They have a really tight radius, so we're gonna put those in.
That's going to help with the transmission tunnel clearance.
Yep.
Hopefully.
And what we're gonna do now, we're gonna mock up this transmission to see what hits. One more thing, this exhaust hanger that goes onto the tail shaft of the 704, we're actually just gonna cut it here. We don't need one because this is really tight and it's not going anywhere. So we're just gonna take that off now. Alright, so we're pumping up the transmission into the body, close to the engine, just to dry fit it to see what we need to cut. We already think we need to cut the tabs at the end over here, and the tabs where the inspection cover goes. So we'll just dry fit it now and see what happens. Alright, so this is what hits over here. Is assembly tabs. Right here, hits right there. And we're going to cut this off, because it looks like that might hit a little bit too over there. And that's kind of real tight to the exhaust on this end. This ear also has to be cut over here. And we'll see if that's gonna fit, if that needs clearance in there too for the lines. We're gonna cut the bell housing now. So we're gonna cut these tabs off right here. And we're also gonna cut this. We'll show you what we can do here. We'll cut those off. So we're gonna do that. There she is.
Wow, like butter.
Okay, so we put a straight edge there, and we're gonna cut it right there. That's gonna come off. Same thing on this side. She is. Look at that. So it's the end product. We're just going to take the sharp edges off the corners with a flap disc. And this side over here was already cut, I think, pre-jakes. And we just cut that off. Then we're going to hit it with some black paint and we're done. Okay, we're going to shoot that with some spray paint. Alright, dry fit number 2. Now with all the tabs cut off. I just put the 704 transmission mount here and it bolts right in. It's the same part number. We're going to mock up with this, with the PA racing crossmember here to see how everything fits. Alright, so this crossmember uses the 2 front holes. My old crossmember uses the 2 back holes. So these holes here in the front, I have to run a M10 by 1.5 tap in them to put some threads in them to make use of this transmission mount. Some tap magic on that and drive her home, baby. Alright, so this is tapped and just do the other side. So these are hand tight. I finished tapping them. Now we're gonna take the transmission jack off and see how this sits. We're also gonna mock up the torque arm just to see how are the fuel lines, if they're in the way or anything like that. There's powder coating over there, so that's why it's hard to go in. I'm gonna put the torque arm in. I'm just gonna clean this up a little bit here because that new torque arm mount over here it's powder coated and it's really tough to go on. So we just flap this there just to clearance it some more, so we can put the rear torque arm bracket on there. And that fits nicely now. We have to clearance this because these bolts don't fit. So we have to clearance this bracket, the torque arm, to fit these bolts. Alright, it's all bolted up now. We're just going to tighten it down. Alright, so the torque arm is pretty much in. I might have to move the fuel lines a little bit over. It's not a big deal. I also have to move the fuel lines over from over here, because they're in the way of the connector here, so these fuel lines gotta go. They gotta be moved up. And we gotta clearance a few things here. I'm gonna clearance, there's some marks over there. I don't know if you could see them. There's some marks up there. That's where this bolt here, that's where you put the extension to tighten it down. It hits the body over here a little bit, the tunnel. So I'm just gonna clearance that a little bit there. I'm also gonna, the pan hits a little bit here. So I might just clearance the lip over here a little bit. That's not a big deal. And back here, the tunnel, it hits the tunnel over there, so I'm gonna have to clearance that over there. So those are the spots that I need to clearance. Alright, so this is where the transmission was hitting. We're gonna take a piece of wood and a little mini sledge and clearance that, make some room. So we're going to clearance this a little bit here for ease of access to this bolt with the extension. We'll put an SFI 29.1 ATI flex plate. That's the engine side. So put that on the car. You should know the torque converter bolt pattern. 480E, it's 11.5. And now we're going to put these ARP bolts in. Sunbeam lube under the head, some red Loctite on the threads, and put it on. Repeat that for the rest. Put an 10mm socket, 12-point on it, go to 85 foot-pounds in a star pattern. And we have a flywheel turner here, and someone's holding it so the flywheel doesn't turn. And once you get that done for that bolt, you mark it and go to the cross one and do star pattern all around. We'll go ahead and do that now. And that's the last one, and we're good. Alright, so we're putting half a quart transmission fluid in here, as per Jake's instructions. Now we drop the transmission again after mocking everything up. We're going to clearance a few things also. We're going to fill this converter with half a quart and put the converter back on. Alright, slowly so we don't damage the seal. This has to be an inch inside the mounting pads from belt housing mating surface. Doesn't matter how many clicks, just keep going until it goes all the way in. Turning it and pushing in. There you go. Ah, another click. I think we're good. We're just going to measure now the distance to see if we're in spec. Okay, so we got a straight edge across the belt housing mounting surface, and between that and the mounting pad of the converter, it's 1 inch. That's the spec. That means the converter's all the way in, so you're good. Alright, now we got it strapped back up, and we're going in for the kill. You got a dowel pin up there. Just gotta move it around. Make sure the snout on the converter goes inside the crank.
Okay.
So we're going to jack up the back of the engine a little bit. Alright, so transmission is close, and we put a bolt in, hand tight.
Yeah.
Just got to keep finagling in, moving up and down, catch some bolts by hand, and just move it back and forth. And now we're putting this in place. Alright, so the dowel pins went in, and we're just tightening down the bolts a little bit, all around. On the top one we can't because of the dipstick tube. Okay, so now the transmission already had the rubber bushing in here, so we took off the one from the dipstick, and we're just going to put a little bit of lube here and try to push the dipstick in here. That's going to be a pain in the ass and hard to show on camera, so I'm going to try to do it. Alright, so we cut the dipstick tube up there, and we're tightening that down. We're going 25 foot-pounds, and I'm going to go ahead and torque down all the belt housing bolts. So all the belt housing bolts are in. I do want to mention that we had to drop the crossmember again, and we put a jack underneath here with a block of wood, only because it was easier to fit the dipstick tube. So while you have it down like that, it's also a great idea to go in and get the top bolts for the belt housing. So now I'm just going to put this back up and tighten it down. You already saw me tighten this down before, so it's the same procedure. Alright, now we're going to take some measurements here. Jake wants these pictures with these measurements to honor the warranty. So one last thing I like to do here is grab the torque converter once everything's installed and go a couple turns while pushing it in again, just to double check that it's seated. And once you're fairly confident that it's seated, you grab an 1/8 drill bit and a 3/16 drill bit, and put that between the mounting hole of the flex plate and the mounting pad of the converter. And as you can see here, this one, the 3/16 does not fit. So that gap is smaller than 3/16, which is what you want. You want it to be bigger than an 1/8 of an inch, which it is. So I'm going to put a feeler gauge in there and see exactly what that measurement is. So I have my feeler gauge in there, and that's exactly what it is. And you add all these up, it's 0.128. And what you're looking for is, it has to be between 1.20 and 1.87. If it's not, and you have to shim this, you can get a grade 8 washer and put it in there, and then check the tolerance again. So I'm going to take a picture of that, being 128, and send it to Jake's. Okay, now put a straight edge on the pan rail. This is something else that Jake wants to see for the warranty purposes. Put a straight edge in the pan rail and see where that hits the dipstick. Then where it hits, the full mark should be 1/4 inch above that. which this one is. And I sent a picture of that to Jake, and the warranty should be good on this. Alright, so everything clears. I had to push the fuel lines out of the way. Those are custom fuel lines, so you're not going to have that issue if you do this on a 3rd gen. Over here, the last bit of clearance that we need is right here. And the transmission pan actually touches the crossmember right here a little bit. I can't really notch it because there's like a boss that the screw goes, the bolt goes through there, and you can't really notch it there. So I realized that to get this to align, you have to move the transmission over that way. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna put the transmission up and have it sit where it wants to sit. Then I'm gonna clearance these holes over here. It's not off by a lot. And once I do that, it should give us some space over there. So let me lower it down. And that's how much after clearance. And it's actually clearing now. So I'm just going to notch these holes over here to make it clear. So not a big deal. I'm going to go ahead and notch that. So I jacked up the transmission. Go ahead and ream these holes out a little bit. And that's good. Now let's try this side. And this side's good too. Now another issue here is this bolt doesn't go all the way through. So I try hammering it, but it only goes up to a certain amount. It doesn't go all the way through. It goes a little further in this way, but still doesn't go all the way through. So I think happened here was when this was welded on, it contracted a little bit and it's a little oblong here. So I'm gonna go in here and ream it out a little bit so this bolt fits through. Alright, we're good. Also, don't forget to put your butt plug in the back of the transmission so nothing goes in it. So I'm mocking the shackle up. It's a little close. So I'm just going to take about a 1/16 off this bolt head. Maybe just that little ridge there. Just for some extra clearance. Just to clear that. Okay, now that I took a little bit off that head, you can see there's tons of clearance there. So I'm happy with that. Alright, so one problem we're having here is there's no clearance for this nut over here to put a socket on it, and the same thing with the top. So we're just going to leave the top the way it is, and I'm just going to cut over here a little bit of a clearance just to make some room for the socket. That should be good. Alright, now, as you can see, I can fit my socket in there. That's perfect clearance. Just a little bit off the edge. I'm going to tighten this down and tighten that down to spec. Now this goes to 100 foot-pounds of torque. That's good. And always remember to put these bolts from top down. Just in case they break, you don't want them falling underneath if you put them underneath. Alright, so the problem here now is we have a drive shaft loop we want to put here, but it's hitting this bolt over here. So we have to cut this so we can move this over so it'll fit. So cut it there and cut it there. So I'm going to cut that now. Alright, so I threaded these in. I'll leave that there. And this is what you use to adjust your pinion angle. So I'm going to adjust the pinion angle afterwards. Okay, so I put the shackle on the end of this torque arm here. Got this two spacers over here. These are 15/16, and I'm gonna tighten this down, but take this off when I mount it to the car. And we're good. Now slide this in first, and then over here, try to slide this in. Let's put the bolt in for this one. Okay, so when I put this up, I turned this all the way in, so this is all the way together. And this way you adjust the pinion angle. Up here it's off. The car's pretty much sitting on its weight in the back. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to connect the front here. And now over here I could adjust this to bring it so this could be close to here, and I'm going to put the bolt up there too. Now I'm looking towards the back of the car. I'm turning this clockwise, and as I'm doing that, this is getting pushed in. Alright, so we got the goal here is to get the back two in. There's a lot of adjusting and putting back together, adjusting, putting back together. And now over here, we're just turning this to adjust it closer over here, because it's not aligning it properly to right yet. But there's a lot of mock-up and putting together. So there you are. I think. Give it up. Another quick thing I'm doing here is I'm grinding down this bolt head a little bit because it was touching the motor mount, the transmission mount. So I don't want it when this articulates back and forth, I want it rubbing on the mount. So just a little bit off here and we're good on this. So that there is clearanced. That's not going to touch the rubber, the bushing. Now over here, there's some space between these shackles here, so I'm just going to put some washers here to take that space up. And that should be good there. Now it's 1 1/8" on this side and 1 1/16 on this side. Go ahead and tighten that down. Alright, so tighten this down. Don't go too crazy, because you do want this to articulate back and forth. Okay, now I have a drive shaft loop, and I put some red thread locker on these bolts, and go ahead and tighten these down. Go ahead and tighten those down. And that's in two. Now the last piece of the torque arm is tighten these down. These are 15/16 bolts and nuts. That's good. And that's bolted in. Alright, so this torque arm is in for now. I got clearance over here. If you can see, that bolt head where the bushing is. I have plenty of clearance there. I have plenty of clearance here, because I moved the transmission over. And everything pretty much fits nicely. That's how everything looks. Had to do some modifications to this, as you saw, but it's actually coming along together. Okay, now for the drive shaft, I'm using these spicer joints, the 1350 joints. And I'm also using this Sunex slip yoke for 480E. This is forged chromoly, so I'm going to put that in there too. Grab that. Pop the bottom, cap off, and there's the old joint. Okay, so pull one cap at a time. Make sure you press this up so the bearings don't fall out. I'm already halfway in here. And knock this the rest of the way in. Now if you can see the groove, just put it in your clips, just like that. Now put the other one on and hammer that in. Alright, I'm just going to pop this out, put the new one in now. Alright, so the yoke is on. Now I'm going to test fit this on the car. Put the slip yoke in. Okay, now your suspension loaded. You gotta have at least 3/4 of an inch travel before you bottom out. So, bottoming out is all the way over there. And you wanna see how much it travels outside. So I have about an inch, and that's fine. Minimum is 3/4 of an inch. So, and the suspension is loaded, so I'm good. Alright, so now I'm going to adjust the pinion angle, and this is what I'm going to use. I downloaded this app. It's called Tremic Toolbox, and it gives you a bunch of things here, and one of them is a driveline angle finder. And they want you to take 3 measurements. One is from the crankshaft, and one is from the drive shaft, and one in the rear end. And that's what it looks like. This is when it's angling up, and that's when it's angling down. 98% of the time, all you have to do is just take the crankshaft angle and the pinion angle and adjust the pinion angle. In my case here, I have solid rod ends, so it depends what kind of suspension you have and what you're using the car for. Drag racing applications would be a little different. But in this car, I have rod ends in the back, and the suspension won't travel more than probably a degree because everything's solid. So I'm going to put 1 degree of pinion angle on this. Alright, so make believe this is the engine and transmission. This is the tail shaft of the transmission. If this is pointing down 5 degrees, I want the pinion to point up 4 degrees. So when you're accelerating under load, the pinion travels up. So when it travels up, it'll travel up about 1 degree and it'll be in line. And that's where you want it. Alright, so I put a straight edge on the crank pulley. And as you can see there, the phone is reading 2.2 degrees down on the crank pulley. Now we're under the torque arm mount over here. That says 4.7, 4.8. Up. You can see it's up. You just turn the camera. Just turn the phone like this and it'll go up. The direction, don't worry about that. It's just the way you're measuring this. I'm going to double check this. I took the drive shaft off. I'm going to put it over here. As you can see over here on the face of the pinion yoke, it says 4.8, 4.9. So I know that that's a good reading. This is what we got here. The engine transmission is 2.2 down, and the yoke right now is 4.8 up. So we need to bring, right now the difference between these two is 2.6. So we have to bring this measurement down 3.6. It should be reading at the pinion 1.2. So if it's reading 1.2 up at the pinion, if we allow for 1 degree of travel, it'll travel up the pinion to to 2.2, positive. I hope I didn't confuse you guys, but I think you guys have the idea here of what we're trying to achieve. I also want to mention one thing. The car has to be on ride height. So I have the car on 4 blocks of wood. If it's not on ride height, see how much the pinion angle changes? So I just want to throw that in there. It has to be in ride height. Okay, so I loosened these 2 bolts here. Now I'm going to turn this with a 1-inch wrench until that goes to 1.2. So let's see which way I need to go with this. Okay, so it's 4.0, so I'm going the right way. I was going to turn that until I reach 1.2. 1.2. 1.1, 1.2. And we're good. So I got the jam nuts, I tightened them back down. I tightened these down too. Last thing, if you do happen to drive around and you notice a vibration, go back here and turn it a little bit either way until you find that sweet spot. Now put the pinion U-joint straps on. And I'm going to tighten these down. I also put some blue thread locker on these threads. Okay, so I put a pry bar by the U-joint to hold it down, and it's going to go down to 20 foot-pounds. And we're all done. So these are RP bolts we're going to put on the flex plate to torque converter to mate them together. It's ARP part number 2307304. Now these are 4L80E torque converter bolt sizes. These are M10s 1.5, so we'll torque these down to 50 foot-pounds. Now the problem here is, which it's really not a problem, the flex plate I'm using has holes drilled for 7/16 bolts. So it's about a 1/16 bigger than where it should be for these M10s. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to put all the bolts in hand tight, then I'm going to turn the flex plate the rotation of the motor, which if you're looking at it from the front of the car towards the back, it's clockwise. So I'm going to put all the bolts in hand tight, then turn the flex plate clockwise to butt these up against the flex plate. Then I'm going to go ahead and torque these down to 50 foot-pounds. So I'll go ahead and do that now. Put some red Loctite on the bolt. You could spin the torque converter so the holes line up. Just like that. And as you tighten it down, this will draw in the converter closer to the flex plate. So right now, let's just put it finger tight. Okay, so leave them loose. I'm just going to go 1 revolution, make sure they're loose again, and I'm going to go clockwise, make sure they all butt up against the flex plate. And that one's good. And the last bolt. And we're done. Alright, so now I'm going to put the temperature, I have a temperature sensor I want to put in the pan for my odometer gauge up top. Some people put the temperature sensor on top. Over here, there's an 8th plug up there. Right there on the case. But that only measures case temperatures. This is better for average temperatures here. So you should always put it somewhere where there's no obstruction inside. So I'm going to put it right here. And if you lower this down, you can see here, there's no obstruction here. So I'm going to put the gauge right there. Sorry, the sensor right there. Alright, so it's going to go right here. I'm going to use a center punch to start the hole. Put some piece of tape on this step drill bit. It's going to go to 1/2 inch. That's the size I want that opening to be. So I'll go ahead and drill this bad boy. Use a little ridge reamer to clean that hole before you stick it. So this is the fitting we're putting in from Hayden, part 270. And that's what it comes with. So I'm just going to go ahead and put this in now. That's a 3/4 inch nut on one side and 3/4 inch on this side. And the copper washer is on this side. So go ahead and tighten that down. And we're good. Now on the sender, I'm gonna put some blue Monster PTFE tape, and you go with the threads. Just gonna put a little bit, nothing crazy. And this is a 12mm, goes right on it. Go ahead and pop her in. And we're good. So before we put the pan on, one thing I want to show you guys that I noticed, because I put the pan on and off a couple times, and I noticed that this filter wiggled off this extension here. Now what Jake did, he just made this a couple of months ago. I think he just started making these. This is a custom extension piece he made, and he puts a TH400 high flow filter on here. This is what I noticed. So I was going up and down a couple of times, up and down, up and down, up and down, and it's just wiggled off. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to put some washers in here to hold this in place, so it won't wiggle off like that. So I'm going to go ahead and take this bolt off. Okay, so I'm going to put one washer on top, and as you can see, this is a shoulder bolt. It's got a shoulder over there. That sits even with the shoulder, and you have two washers underneath. And the one washer on top is just to have the filter lay more down into the oil, into the fluid more. So let me put this on now. Okay, it caught. Now go over here and press this in. And go ahead and snug that up. And over here, as you can see, I'm pulling down pretty hard on this, and it's not going anywhere. That, my friends, is a good seal right there. So before I put the pan on, I noticed one thing. There's a plug where the pressure control solenoid is supposed to be. So that's going to throw a code. It's probably going to throw a code, something to the effect of pressure control solenoid, open circuit, or something like that. That's fine. That's just the way the transmission was designed. And there, unfortunately, in the US shift, I did speak to the techs in US shift. There's nowhere in the software where you could just disable that code. So you can see that code when you first start it up. Next thing I'm going to do before I put the pan on is I'm going to put these two magnets I got. There's a gym part number 295 35617. And I'm going to put them along the pan where it's next to the filter. I'll show you on the car real quick. They're going to be around here somewhere. So that's when I'm going to put these magnets in. Now put the pan on. Now go ahead and hand tight all these except for where the shifter bracket's going to go. Okay, so I put this bracket on here. I had this on 700R4. This is for the B&M shifter. I have to mock it up. I have spaces here I can put here. So there's some mocking up here. I don't want to show you guys everything because it'll take forever. I think I'm just going to show you the end product, what I come up with. So I'm just going to go ahead and mess around with this for now. Alright folks, so if you have a mega shifter, this is the final outcome here. This is how it should be installed. Right? Now I have somebody in the car right now. I'm going up this way and around. There's no major kinks on this cable, and it actually shifts really nicely inside. So I have it in park now, and as you can see, this goes in and out very freely. If this comes out and this springs forward or backwards, this bracket for the transmission, then you've done something wrong. You have to readjust this. So now let's go to drive. That's drive, and this, look, comes out very, very easily. As you can see that, very easily. Now there's a problem here though. There's one modification you have to do. This over here, see how far it sticks out? It actually hits the pan. And it won't let you go to L1. So I have to notch the pan a little bit to clear that. So let me show you what I'm talking about. Alright, so I have somewhere inside the car. Go to L1. Okay, right there. That's L1. And it fits. It just doesn't clear. Hold on, let me get a better shot of this. It hits the pan if it's all the way out. So if you're not getting L1, low 1, that's the problem right there. So I'm going ahead and clearance that now. So I'm also going to clearance this a little bit over here just because this is at a weird angle and it hits this bracket just a smidge over here. I marked it with a scribe. So, and that only happens in first gear, so I'm not too worried about that. I'm going to take off a little bit over there. So I'm going to take this bracket off, I'm going to take this bracket off, and I made 2 lines here with the scribe where I'm going to clearance the pan. Alright, so that should be good. I used a carbide bit. I'm just going to spray paint this a little bit with some black and clean it up a little bit, and it should be fine. Alright, now that clears the pan, that's all the way in. Before I can even do that, there's a little cotter pin that goes in there. I just put that in. I'm going to recheck everything that moves back and forth, make sure nothing touches anywhere. And this also clears. I took this boot off just so to show you guys. This was touching before over here, and now it doesn't touch at all. I'm just going to move the boot back. The boot actually split from before. So we're good. I might put longer bolts here because we have spacers in between this bracket and the pan, and everything looks good. Okay, the car is in park, so we're going to tighten this tab down to 17 millimeter. And that's good. And that's tight as well. And the whole shifter mechanism is clearanced and it works properly and it's all down tight. I just have to zip tie this cable a little better and secure it, and it's done. Now I'm going to tie in all these bolts to 24 foot-pounds. Now put the temperature sensor wire on here. And that's tight. So we're going to install this 34-row stack plate cooler from Derale, part number 53406. And they also come with -6 adapters that you could put on here. And we'll go ahead and put this in now. So I plan on mounting it over here in front of the radiator, but it's going to be more forward towards the front of the car, because eventually I might have to move the radiator up a little bit, because this car I'm going to put a supercharger on, a pro charger, and I might have to move the radiator up. So I don't want to put it close to the radiator, I want to put a little more forward. Now I'm going to take some of these plastics off so I could easily access over there. So that's 10 millimeters over here. Take these off too in the front. There's 3 of them. And drop the bolt on the floor like that and take that off. These 2 push pin style rivets over here. Pop those off. So I got a long panel remover. Let's see if I could use this to take that off. Yep, there you go. And this is what I'm going to do on this end. That pops off too. There's actually one more on top here. There's one more on the other side too, but that one was missing. So I'm just go ahead and finagle that one off. Open up this hatch door. Now just try to push this down and out. And that's it. Now I take these scoops off. You go over here, pop these plastic rivets out. There's one, And there's two. Now let's lock this in place. Okay, so now I just gotta mock it up, see where I'm gonna put everything. Also, I'm gonna put the fittings on here, make sure everything clears, which it does. And what I'm thinking of doing is making a bar going down the middle, straight like this, and using these already existing bolt holes, and putting the bolt through the bars, the bolts through the bar. And then making two holes, one here and one here to mount this on. So it'll be mounted just like that. And there's a bolt up here, and there's a bolt on this side up here. I'm thinking of using those, maybe one or both, to mount the top tabs. But I'll see what I come up with. That's the plan anyway. Alright, now I'm going to use this flat stock. I'm going to cut it right over here, so the cooler could sit on it flush. Cutter right there. Okay, so now I mocked it up. I'm just gonna make a hole here and a hole here for the bolts to go through. Use a punch there, put some tap magic and driller. So I just drilled both holes and it was great. So I painted the bar and I'm putting these in as studs because these are gonna be where this cooler mounts, just like that. I'm gonna go put this bar in the car. So this is the end piece. I had to notch it here a little bit too. When I mocked it up, this was hitting the bracket over here for the hood latch. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in. I also put the bigger bolts at the end over there, so these could slide through. Look at that. Just like stock, baby. Just like stock. So I'm going to tighten down this bar and put the cooler on. And this bar is tight. Alright, so that's how it sits. And now I gotta do the bracket from on top. Okay, I'm gonna use this piece of aluminum, flat stock, to make the upper bracket. So I made a little template from cardboard. There's a bolt that goes through the radiator support over here. It goes for the airbag sensor, 10mm bolt. I'm gonna put this between that bolt, and this is gonna bend down and do like a U and come around here and hold this in place. So it's gonna look like something like this. Something like that. So I'm going to transfer this onto the bracket. Alright, so I'm just going to make this bracket, make a hole here, bend it, just like I have the bends in here. Then I'll show you the finished product. So this is my end result. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the bolt off from on top over here and bolt this in and leave this bolt to the end, because this is soft aluminum, so I could bend it up and down if need be to match it up to the cooler. So we're going to do that now. And now tighten that down. And we're good here. Alright, so I put this in. It looks good. It's pretty steady, and it's not even bolted down yet. So I'm happy with it. Alright, so now I'm going to mock these up as well. We're using Aero Quips 90s, part number FBM1122. And these are for Teflon fittings. These are Teflon fittings, sorry. And we're using Teflon lines for the transmission lines. So I already put the other side in, and this one goes in here. So it looks something like that. Alright, I'm not going to bore you guys showing you how to make steel braided lines. I have a video on how to do that. I'll put the link in the description below. Basically, I'm just going to put this olive in between the Teflon and the steel braiding. And this is going to be on here, of course, and tighten it down. Then blow it out with some air. So I'm going to go ahead and just do that now. Alright, so over here, this used to be the condenser over here, and this car doesn't have a condenser anymore, so there's a piece of rubber here. So what I'm going to do is I'll make a hole here so the transmission lines can go right through here straight into the cooler. So I'm just going to cut that hole. That's it. So I made the lines, rerouted them. I'm going to go ahead and tighten them down. The cooler's tightened down. I tightened down the bolts underneath, and this thing is not moving at all, which is nice. So I'm just going to go ahead and route these. I put the orb fittings in, the -6AN orb fittings on the cooler, and I'm going to tighten those down, and then put these on and tighten these down. And the fittings are on tight, and that's tight too. So everything's installed up here, and that's what it looks like. And now the transmission case, that's nice and tight, and that's tight. Alright, so I'm going to use these Vibrant Performance part number 20611 line separators. These fit perfectly for these -6 Teflon lines. And I'm going to use some of this thermo shield to wrap around here where it goes close to the headers. Alright, so I put this in. I put steel zip ties and the wrap. It's all wrapped all the way on top. I'm going to put a hose clamp. There's an existing hole here. I'm going to use that for the hose clamp bolt. So go ahead and do that. Alright, so that's done. Alright, so that's what it looks like. I'm just going to take this factory clamp off here and put another clamp here to hold this in place. And that's good. And that's it. The lines are secured and in place. Alright, so all these plastics are in. It's just about popping them in. Not a big deal. It's reversal of removal. And now slide this in. Okay, now everything's done on top here. The plastics are on. Alright, now I'm going to loom everything. I already loomed the VSS sensors. And this one I'm going to loom the main connector. What I'm going to do is I'm going to loom them. Then I'm going to go inside the car, have somebody yank them and pull them in. And the excess. So nothing to see here, folks. Just plain old looming. And they supply with the looming. All the wires are tucked in. We pull them in from inside. And this main connector has an arrow. This should be up on top when you plug this in. So I'm going to go ahead and try to plug this in. Hopefully we get no issue here. Ah, yeah, baby, she's in. Okay, now the front VSS sensor. Ah, and that's in. Woo! And the rear one. And that one's in too. I had to put it in with one of these. Alright, back to wiring inside the car. I ran a few more wires around here. I got these zip tie thingies from Amazon. I'll put the link in the description below. I'm just going to put these tabs here, stick-on tabs, one here, put one there on the other side already, one in the middle. Then run a zip tie through there and get this harness out of the way of the shifter. And over here I shortened a lot of these cables because I'm going to hide the controller in here. So I did all that already, and I'm just going to spiffy everything up and tidy everything up here. And that's how it looks. Put the zip ties in place. You don't have to drill any holes. And it clears the shifter and everything here. So I'm just going to put the shifter plate on and we're done here. Alright guys, now we're down to the final wire, literally. And these are the 6 wires that you have to connect coming out of the controller. And these are what these wires are. They tell you everything in the instructions. The 2 blacks are the grounds. I'm going to put them together, splice them together, and put them to the ground close to the ECU grounds. As close to the ECU as possible, the grounds that the ECU uses. Then 110 wires speedo out. I'm going to put that, I have a Dakota digital box, I'm going to put that signal in, connect that there. The next one is red, that's a power wire. Now I'm going to use the power that feeds the computer. Next wire is yellow, it's engine RPM, so I have RPM out from the computer. And then I have the green wire is TPS signal. So those are the wires I'm going to connect. I'm not going to show you guys me connecting these wires because every car is different. I have a mega squirt in this car, so it's not going to be your average 3rd gen connections. But anyway, you get the idea of what wires you need to connect where. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. So the wiring's done. The last bit of the puzzle here is just put these connectors in. And these are very simple. And the last one is the VSS's. And we're ready. Okay, now we're going to put 4 quarts in here, 4 or 5 quarts. And then when we start it, we're going to start filling it up. So go ahead and do that. Alright, so now you have to calibrate the TPS sensor. So put the car on the run, and you can see this little display is on with a whole bunch of stuff on it. Temperature 73 degrees now in the valve body. So now I'm going to go and calibrate the TPS. Turn the knob until setup menu is highlighted. Setup menu right there. Click on setup menu, TPS setup, into that. I'm also going to do the speedometer. That was the speedometer thing there. I'm going to do that. As you're driving, you can actually move this knob around and calibrate your speedometer as you're driving. Now settings. So go to auto set TPS, click on that. So now you hold the pedal all the way down, floor position. Now release pedal. Auto set successful. So once it says auto set success, that means no errors were detected and you're good to go. Alright, so the car's running. We filled it up with fluid, ran it for 5 seconds, checked the fluid again, filled it up, did that a couple times. Now the fluids seems that it's good. I'm getting an APS solenoid circuit open, but that was to be expected because of the plug that I showed you in the valve body for that solenoid, the pressure control solenoid. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through all the gears on the lift and then in reverse as well, just to go through all the gears, then put it in park. I'll check the fluid. If everything looks good, we take it for a spin. Put it in drive. It's in second gear. Press the brake. It's in reverse. It says reverse up here, so that's good too. So one final thing before we take it for a test drive, check for leaks. Check all the fittings, the cooler. There's no leaks over here anywhere. Nothing over there. Everything looks good. And let's go for a test drive. Alright, so we're driving around. It looks like it's shifting firm and nice. There's a little bit of a whining noise. I think the trans has straight good gears in it. But anyway, we're driving around. Nothing seems to be anything out of the ordinary. Doing pretty good. Now just speedometer. Alright, so what we're doing now is we're gonna go on the highway. We got the GPS. We're gonna calibrate that, turn it until the speedometer reads what it should be. Adjusting it. Alright, so we got everything what we wanted. The speedometer matches the GPS perfectly. And I'll give you a rundown of where we landed on the software. Alright, so real quick, I want to also show you what I did in the software. You go to settings here. Of course, make sure it's a full 80E. TPS, I did this on the car. You saw me do it. Speed sensor gearing, I put my rear end ratio here. It's 411s and the tire diameter. I also enabled the input shaft speed sensor. This tells you if there's a slip on the converter. Nothing here, nothing here. The TC commander, I put it on total command mode, and I put I only want the converter to lock up in top gear, which is third in drive or fourth in overdrive, and allowed partial slip, and also enable the TCC slip detection. Nothing off-road, Mantronic, nothing. Low 1, I didn't mess with this yet. Speedometer output, I'm going to mess with the actual controller to do that. I'm not going to mess with this. And nothing, I did nothing here. The only other thing I did while I was driving around, I noticed that the torque converter was engaging kind of harshly. Also, let me say one more thing about the torque converter, sorry. Let's go back here. I also did the minimum RPM engagement of the torque converter lockup at 2200. I feel like that's a better lockup RPM. I don't want to lock up too early in fourth gear when I have it in fourth gear. So 22 is about right. And what I did was the torque converter engagement, which is this graph here. What I did was on part throttle, 10% throttle position, I did the engagement firmness at 3. Also at 20% engagement at 3, 30% engagement at 5, and I didn't touch anything else. I did this only because I felt like it was harshly engaging the lockup. Remember, this is a triple disc also, so it's very grabby. So I kind of massaged this a little bit down here, and now the car drives beautifully. So that's how you install 480E into a third gen Camaro. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our channel, like me, and share me. See ya!